Alex covered all the many aspects that you should be aware of when thinking about DynamoDB costs, and as well as shared strategies on how to optimize them. Unfortunately, Alex forgot to tell us what is his favorite type of coffee, so I won't forget to ask this to our next speaker. But moving on with our flow, basically, even when you apply Alex recommendations, still there may be times when simply you cannot optimize it further, or there may be situations where you simply need to shift to another environment. If that's your case, then you will be glad to hear about our next speaker today. So, Miles Ward actually helped AWS on building its well-architected framework. He also founded Google Cloud Solution Architecture Best Practices, and nowadays he's the CTO at SADA. I worked really closely with Miles and his team during our successful migration from Digital Turbine from AWS to GCP, which of course included Dynamo. And with that said, Miles, hi, thank you so much for being here. And what are you bringing for us today?
Felipe, thank you so much, and everybody who's in the chat. Great questions. I'm looking forward to connecting up and the questions during our panel. I had an Americano with just a little bit of cream on it this morning. That seems to be the default protocol for me. We have a glorious La Marzocco at the house, and I double checked. La Marzocco, at least their public website, runs on Flywheel, which runs on GCP. So yes, you can run a La Marzocco coffee through Google Cloud. Works out great.
Awesome.
Yeah. Today I want to talk through the places where what I'm watching with customers where DynamoDB is a great fit and the places where it isn't. I think there's a lot around the pricing models and the design of those different systems that has a big effect on what is the correct fit for a given workload. So looking forward to talking through all that.
Okay, so without further ado, sorry for my dog barking if you heard that. Well, I will simply leave you to run your presentation.
Perfect. Thanks, man. So look, Felipe is correct. A long time ago, I started a thing that now gets called Well Architected. It's a set of guidance. I think it's now over 900 pages at AWS that helps you think through what is exactly the right way to build a given application. For us, you can imagine maybe that's Netflix, right? They built a bunch of cool stuff with Chaos Monkey and the rest, or maybe you did work together with businesses like the Smug Mug guys who were super early in high performance usage of S3. Maybe let's get started and dig into how we actually built Well Architected and what was the informative piece. So I think a lot of people have seen this page, right? If you're in here and on the AWS website, there's this whole Well Architected system, and it covers a bunch of different disciplines, not only tools that you can use to help make sense of a given system, but best practices for all sorts of different issues. The reality is these lessons don't come from the incredible successes of superstar customers at AWS. They come from absolute failures, total mistakes, unbelievable outages, and all of the war wounds and scars that come with those. I was up for, I don't know how many hours with the folks at Reddit. How many folks have used Reddit? I've used Reddit a couple of times. Reddit did everything that you can do wrong in public cloud. They were in a single zone. They would use single disks. They completely eschewed the concept of EBS volumes. It was all ephemeral for a while. They expected, they kept asking us for access to the cPanel, which is a holdover technology from VPS days. So, it's really important to understand the unique nuances of these products and to build your solutions and tune your applications to take best advantage of them. When we worked with Reddit, a bunch of the reasons that they chose the design system that they did weren't for operational excellence or the best security or deep reliability. They really even weren't trying to get to maximum performance efficiency. And I don't even think sustainability was on their radar. What they were about was cost optimization. They were trying to build the cheapest system that they could to be profitable. And I hear from customers all the time that while they certainly like this list, it's a good list. They have one thing in mind, and they're trying to figure out how to run this stuff in a price efficient way. And that becomes exponentially more important as you get exponentially more customers. All of these systems, that's how public cloud works, are designed to scale along with your usage. And so the bigger you get, the more important the answers to these questions and the opportunities on the far side of optimization really are. So who am I? I'm Miles Ward. I'm CTO at SADA. I was in the first 100 employees at AWS. I was also in the first 100 employees at Google Cloud and the first 100 here at SADA. We are Google Cloud's largest resale and implementation partner. I've got a team of hundreds of incredible engineers that help people get implemented and stood up, sometimes migrating from AWS and DynamoDB onto GCP and its alternatives. We have won their Partner of the Year back to back. It's easy to lose count. So they usually give us that because customers are happy and they have a good time with the product. So if you need help, we're happy to provide it. The reason that we're good at it is we actually have the expertise. So when I say we built a well architected, that's exactly what we did. And we have worked now with some 1,200 customers over just the last couple of years, stewarding their migration and optimization on the platform. So let's talk about where DynamoDB is great. And yes, this slide is a little weird to read, but ride with me on this. The one of the clearest things that Alex said in his presentation is, he had customers talking to him about, how to tightly optimize their system and make sure that they're, precisely configured correctly. When in the beginning, it's so hard to predict what your usage will actually be. Right? That's what public cloud was designed to do. I don't know whether customers are going to show up today or the next day or the day after that, but then all of a sudden there's more customers than you can deal with. I worked as a part of the team that helped Pokemon Go get launched. When they built, they were pretty quickly using slightly more infrastructure than all of Gmail globally from their launch some 15 days before that. So you can imagine there's folks that scale like crazy. It's really hard to keep up with big changes in usage. So DynamoDB is really great, especially in that on-demand mode and the auto-scaling modes, with keeping track of what feel like natively cloudy workloads where you can't really predict how much usage there's going to be. It could be a lot more than you expect. And in many, many cases, really importantly, it could be a lot less than you expect. It's super easy to build a, super huge database and then have, like you were hearing him talk about 3% utilization. I think that's a happy outcome. I have lots of customers that are at 0.3% of utilization going, why did I pay for all this stuff? In the same way, when you are teeny tiny, super small, right? Like, really think about it. We had a question in the chat that was talking about, 1 trillion operations a day. That's pretty big. But we have customers that are like, I get, thousands of new customers a day. Well, that works out to, less than 1 request per second if you're doing account signups. So if you're small, things like DynamoDB are really, really efficient. You put all of that operational work, all of the distribution work over onto AWS's operation engineers, and it makes a big difference in keeping things inexpensive, right? You're paying fractions of a penny. You probably fit, in many cases, inside of AWS's free tier. So double check in the billing console to see if your app is even being charged at all for DynamoDB. On the other side, there's this idea that, if you take a loan from the bank for $100, you owe the bank $100. But if you take a loan from a bank for $100 million, maybe it's kind of their problem. When you are huge, right? If you, not 1 trillion operations, but 10 trillion, 100 trillion operations a day, at that kind of size, Amazon is going to assign dedicated resources to the specifics of what you're doing. They're going to have all sorts of internal optimizations about your workload in particular. They're going to tune their work to accommodate your systems. And that's incredibly valuable. So those are some of the best operations engineers in the world. And it's the kind of thing that you might have trouble paying for. So in any other kind of way. So when you're massive, then it might make sense to take a look at a partnership. I think at that point, you'd literally be talking with executives over on their side and thinking through what it looks like to handle the kind of well understood, very predictable, but very large traffic patterns. Imagine, some of the biggest businesses in the world. Now, the problem is, think of this like Goldilocks, right? Like you got the 3 different kinds of porridge, and Papa Bear's is maybe a little too big, and Baby Bear's is maybe a little too small. The thing is, we're talking about databases, and so the numbers are very big, right? I'm already talking about trillions. So the reality is, too big, massive, I promise you, I appreciate everybody who's on the call. None of you have a workload that's that big. And too small, microscopically small, I don't know if you'd take the time to be on a call today thinking about how to optimize cost. If you're doing 1 request per day, you've already fit in the free tier. Almost all of us are right here in the middle with normal applications that you're getting paid to maintain and to operate, to help add features to build new value in. And in those normal applications that are getting, say, tens of thousands of requests a day, those kinds of interactions are places where there are some much more optimal configurations. So I've worked for a long time with the folks at ScyllaDB. They've built an API compatible product called Alternator that works the same as DynamoDB's engine, but allows you to host it through Scylla's cloud and on the virtual machine footprints of any one of the public cloud providers. So let's talk about places where DynamoDB maybe is not so great. Right? If you're over that minimum viable size, you're above the free tier, now you're starting to spend hundreds, maybe thousands of dollars on database infrastructure. At that point, it is a lot more expensive than some of the alternatives that sit out there. In the same way, DynamoDB, there was a question in the chat about DynamoDB speed, and how do I have a super hungry database, I want to be able to go as fast as possible. DynamoDB, because it is able to handle every conceivable different user, you've got huge ones and small ones, they have to set up a configuration that makes some compromises. One of those is the absolute performance of the system is a little bit lower. And as a result, that throughput and the user experience on the far side of systems that are dependent on databases are really, really a place where Scylla would shine. And in the same way, DynamoDB turns out only available on the AWS cloud. And I work with a lot of customers that they're born by acquisition. They've got other companies that are a part of the fold. They have partners that work in other clouds, and they have to be able to bring data and data systems to bear there. They have customers who demand that you be deployed in a certain place. You can imagine if Walmart is your customer, they're not going to let you deploy on AWS, things like that. And so there's lots of reasons why more and more companies are going multi-cloud, including hybrid and distributed clouds, where you would run on-prem, run at your edge, run in local systems, run on a Raspberry Pi, right? All of those kinds of diverse implementations aren't the kind of thing you can run with DynamoDB. And you can imagine, even if you decide you're going to run on AWS today, and that's going to be where your business starts, if you have any imagination that you're going to get big enough where you have to talk to your customers in their data platform, or you have an edge or these kinds of hybrid needs, building on a system that can run in all of those environments is a pretty smart strategic choice. So one of our customers, Digital Turbine, they were actually at the P99 Conf last year, and I certainly recommend you come to the P99 Conf this year. It's a great conference. They had what could only be like the most canonical set of requests. Almost every customer I ever talked to has these needs. They would like to save money. No. Pretty obvious. They'd like it to be faster while they're at it. Like certainly better performance would go great. And they'd like that to be easy enough where it's not a total pain in the neck. So, you can imagine, I think if you asked somebody about a database platform migration, that sounds daunting. That sounds like an intimidating task. The reality is for them, it was done in just a matter of a couple of weeks. So let's talk about the first bit though. Like I want it to be cheaper. So this is the pricing calculator. I'm actually going to go over, I think you can see this tab. Here is the ScyllaDB public pricing calculator. Now you'll note on this thing, you can slide this bar wherever you want, bang, bang. But over here to the left, 10,000 operations a second. It literally won't estimate smaller than that. So there's kind of an early indication, right? If you're talking about hundreds of operations a day, maybe moving between systems is a little premature. You can click this little button though to compare pricing. If you were all the way up to just the minimum size here, 10,000 operations a second, I mean, you're talking on the order of saving a fifth in comparison to DynamoDB. That's a big change. And of course, as these numbers get bigger, oh boy, that number gets quite a lot bigger. So now you'll also note that running that on Scylla DB Cloud here costs this. If you were going to run it instead of on AWS and on GCP, you save even more. It's about 10% cheaper. That's because the infrastructure systems on Google cost a little bit less. It's the advantage of them having more computers than Amazon does. So you can run Scylla in those two places, and frankly, anywhere else that you want. The Scylla managed cloud is available here, but there is, of course, open source Scylla and Scylla Enterprise and all the other options that are available. So those sizes and this configurator, right, is really critical for your estimation about where things get price efficient. So, and in the same way where you might want to think of kind of 10 as a minimum, where that's probably the size where it makes sense to start considering alternatives. The other way, if you're all the way up over 10 million requests a second, you should be talking to somebody. Right? If I actually go in here and say like, no, I got it, I'm gonna change it up, I'm gonna make it like 11 million, it won't even let me do it. Right? If you get above that, you should probably contact us. Click this little button in the right hand corner so they can talk shop. But we were talking earlier about what are the things that drive these numbers. Yes, requests per second is a big driver of that. But look, if I'm down here at 10,000 and I just double my object size, oh boy, look on Scylla, the price doesn't change. But over there on Dynamo, ooh-wee, that price changes a lot. That's because there are, some advantages to the object storage model on the Scylla side. If I go above 4K, now I'm into 6K. Now I'm making larger object writes, and the cost will go up, but still nowhere near the size of DynamoDB. So super, super important for you to pay attention to what exactly are the messages that are going back and forth in your application. Not only the reads, but the writes, how much storage you consume. All of those are drivers of the dynamics for cost and for how you can give guidance to maybe the development teams that you work with to be as conservative as possible with data. All that does is produce great dividends over time. So I go back to this button right here, and then back to that button right there, and this one over here. So if the other thing that happens, I clicked it right. There we go. Can you see me now? Yeah. It's one thing for it to be cheaper, right? But we certainly heard from the customer that from Digital Turbine that they wanted it to be faster. This is a set of benchmarking that was done using the Y Combinator. It's a cloud services benchmark. It's a combination of sort of real world re-implementation. So running Hadoop queries, running stuff across a couple of different database types, and it's set up to allow you to test different database systems against each other. So YCSB can run on DynamoDB. They did a configuration that's roughly the same price point as a Scylla DB configuration. This one running on i3 instances, so that's an AWS deployment. But look at those two bars are kind of not the same height. It's on the order of 20 times more throughput. So that's one kind of flavor of faster, is getting more work out per dollar that you put in. So for Scylla Cloud, the throughput performance was really, really marked. So that's, without changing anything about your application, just getting more capability as a result of the more efficient, RAF-based consensus or the tables model or all the other different technical advantages that the DOOR and the Scylla team have put in really make a big difference. You also have, and this is in many cases more critical than throughput. I have a lot of customers that are happy to pay for extra capacity as they bring on customers, but every single customer, every single time, feels replication latency, time to first byte latency, query latency, all of the cycle time delay. I mean, Google is very famous for running every one of the ad purchases. Every ad you've ever seen online happens as an auction in 100 milliseconds, in less than a tenth of a second, typically less time than it takes for you to type a character on your keyboard. So we have a lot of customers where, milliseconds matter. Milliseconds make dollars difference in your applications. So in this situation, Scylla is, some almost 3.5 times faster. This is in replication latency, but it also proves the same in sort of early access latency, time to first byte, query completion averages, the P99s on query completions, things like that. Those performance differences matter not just for the holistic the health of the application, the reliability of its data. Replication is a driver of data durability, but also for the user experience on the far side, how long does it take for that screen to load? Do I actually get the data in a timely manner? So super critical, not an easy thing to run these systems, across a cloud if they are cloud native or a single cloud deployment. So we've already built and designed. We did this a couple years ago at a conference with the Scylla folks, where we were running an application. We built a thing called Memes Gen. We were building a meme generator that was deployed across GCP. That's a Google Cloud infrastructure. We ran it on an on-prem facility, a system called a toaster. That's a computer sitting on my desk, and then also on AWS. And you can replicate across all of those. If a whole cloud goes offline, you can smile and tell your boss the application is still online. If you have a new customer that starts and nobody told you and they demand that you're in AWS, you're already there and it already works. So these kinds of replication topologies are really, really powerful. And we have a lot of customers that are asking us to configure systems that work this way. But, I hear back from customers all the time, whoa. I can't handle this multi-cloud stuff. One cloud is hard enough, too complicated. How am I supposed to sort this thing out? And one of the biggest drivers of that is the network, right? Those little red lines that say data replication. Alex was talking about it costs 4 times as much to write, or 5 times as much. Oh, thanks, man. Meme Gem is totally dope. It costs 5 times as much to write as an object as it does to store it. For egress, right, we're at 12.5 cents a gigabyte coming out of Google Cloud. You're most of the time on the order of 10 cents a gigabyte coming out of AWS. Those are real charges, right? You have to pay attention to egress costs, especially as you're doing this kind of replication. So we work together. The folks at Packet Fabric have a great solution for this. If you're at, megabytes to gigabits a second of throughput, they build a pre-existing data mesh across all the cloud providers that make it so that you can just sort of rent that as you need. That hugely reduces the cost of replication, which makes those kinds of multi-cloud deployments really make sense. If you're even bigger, Google and AWS and Azure now have built dedicated 10 gigabit a second linkages between the cloud providers. That's called interconnect or express route. There are a couple labels for it per cloud. Those can make it so that this kind of replication is super, super reliable as you move up from maybe medium size to extra honk and extra chunky. So we were talking before about kind of what are the conditions where you might go, oh, I don't know, Dynamo is maybe not the right fit. Like you're above a sort of minimum viable size where the cost of these kinds of evaluations actually makes some sense to involve yourself in. You've got, the operator time required to think through these kinds of problems are well worth the ROI you would get as a result of a project. You've got something that's user facing that users depend on, where latency matters, where performance matters. That's going to be a super clear reason to evaluate. And folks that are working in multi-cloud that have to distribute, once you're beyond the walls of AWS, Dynamo starts to look really weird. So useful to take a look at all the 3 of those. For Digital Turbine, it took a couple of weeks. We have other customers that have done it same day, depending on the complexity of your application. And yours might take longer, right? You may need to train and think through all the nuance, but Saad is happy to help with that. I know the Scylla team is too. Looking forward to taking your questions and seeing how else we can help with optimizing your NoSQL workloads. Cheers.
Wow, that was great. Thank you so much, Miles. You know what is very interesting? The other day I wrote a blog about what are some of the considerations when to move out of DynamoDB. And in that blog, I did mention a Reddit post. So it makes so much sense that you're mentioning Reddit nowadays.
Sure.
I relied on Reddit to get some arguments to come up with my blog. And basically, the post title is basically "Folks, don't get me started on DynamoDB." A bit aggressive, because I agree with you. I mean, I think DynamoDB really works really nicely. When you are small, it really becomes an easy to get started and an economical solution that can get you very far along. But as you said, I think the main takeaway is as you grow, eventually, eventually you have to stop simply throwing more money at it, right? What are your thoughts on that? Yeah.
Sure. I think there are lots of folks. These platforms are complicated. right? Like AWS is up to 600 something services. You could scroll through the console for a month and not see everything. And so it sort of feels like if you've picked a cloud, you should like just try to get good at that cloud and be focused on learning there. But the reality is there's there's a whole ecosystem of tools. They have a whole marketplace. There's all sorts of different building blocks. And if you have the the tenacity to roll up your sleeves and learn about this stuff, there's gold in them there hills. People save a lot when they take a more nuanced approach.
Yeah, makes total sense. And one last question, then I'll let you go. I mean, one good thing about your experience is that you got this chance of talking to so many people, so many customers, so many users, and I mean, when they engage with you, I mean, how often is DynamoDB a major contributor to their monthly bills? I mean, effectively, how often do you get into that situation where you are analyzing how they are using their database, and then you say, aha, here's what you guys did wrong, and then you came and saved the day?
Sure. We proudly have something like 3,700 customers. I think it's 3,722 if
Wow.
I look at my dashboard today. We were acquired by a great company, Insight. They have about 30,000 customers. And we do proactive analysis of the bills that
Mm.
we help with. So I'm able to go through and call up customers and be like, there's this part of your bill that's sort of a thing. Sometimes that happens before their customers. They need our help in analysis, thinking through, what is the opportunity that sits here. Happy to provide that as well. But and it's a place where very often I think this stuff is really surprising, right? Once you get something working, there are so many other problems, right? Like we got to get this feature out the door. I got to
Yeah.
launch in Germany. Oh man, we got to figure out, I one of my guys just left. I got to move over all the skills from one person to another. Like, you have all this complexity to deal with. And so sometimes that bill just goes by month after month and it keeps getting a little bigger, but nobody's paying attention. It's really useful to have a third party, somebody come in from the outside who doesn't have anything else to do, but help you go better and help you go faster. And very often we can find some pretty big opportunities.
No, yeah, I think it totally makes sense because at the end of the day, I mean, it's your interest, it's your business to basically make the your customers happy, right? So the best you can help them on saving costs, yeah, the better. Miles, how can someone engage with SAD? I mean, what is the process when?
Yeah, super easy. SADA.com. I'm Miles at SADA.com. It's not like a gigantically complicated email address. I'm Miles Ward on X or Twitter or whatever it's called this week. So happy to talk shop.
All right, Miles, thank you so much.